Thanks, Ricky and Connor, for an excellent presentation. One of the things I've been doing this morning for the students' benefit, I suppose, is just to outline the qualifications of the speakers. I know my particular fourth-year students at the minute, I'm just trying to talk them into doing master's degrees, and they tell me they don't want to see a college ever again when they're finished. But as you see from the speakers, it's kind of to be looked on as a life journey. Most of our speakers here today did their initial qualification, maybe went to industry and saw themselves in a particular niche or specialty, and as the lads have done, and Sean will introduce in a minute, has done as well, build up their qualifications over time. So do take a rest by all means. A year travelling do you no harm, and then we'll welcome you back to GMIT again for masters and further training. So next speaker is Sean Downey. Sean qualified with a BSc Honours degree in building surveying in 1998 from Abertay University in Dundee. He supplemented his degree further by completing a postgraduate diploma in construction law and contract administration in 2002, and in 2005 a postgraduate diploma in planning for engineers. Following graduation, he was involved in the delivery of large-scale commercial projects in Ireland, the UK and Central and Eastern Europe. Sean is also a registered building surveyor. At the Construction Industry Federation, Sean is now Director of Specialist Contracting. Specialist contractors include both the traditional master crafts contractors under the Alliance of Specialist Contractors Association and the Specialist Engineering Contractors for mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, etc. Today, Sean's going to talk to us about the philosophy of lean construction. Lean, of course, has been around for many years, but been very slow to catch on in Ireland. In recent times, however, there's been a significant uplift in Ireland in terms of interest in lean. CIF indeed has developed a lean health check for member companies to help identify the 7 streams of waste and to plan to develop focused company toolkits to address those wastes and help companies stay competitive. So I now invite Sean to address us on the philosophy of lean construction and to update us on the progress of lean in Ireland. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Martin. I suppose a couple of questions first for you. I think this usually works quite well. Apart from the fact that it's on the flyer and LCI and lean is mentioned, how many of you have actually heard the term lean construction being used before? Just put your hand up. You have? Apart from reading the flyer now, tell the truth. How many of you have actually heard of the LCI, the Lean Construction Institute in the US? And how many of you, final question, how many of you actually are on the LinkedIn group, the LCI Ireland LinkedIn group? If there's one thing you do after today, go on LinkedIn. If you haven't got a LinkedIn profile already, get on LinkedIn and join the LCI Ireland LinkedIn community of practice, because that's where all the information is, and that's where you'll find out about exactly what's going on. What I'm going to talk to you about, I'm going to talk for about 15-20 minutes, that's all. Leave plenty of time for questions, because I know there's what our guys are asking me there. Could you leave extra time for questions, because we've plenty of answers. But I'm director of specialist contracting in the Federation, so I look after all the trade contractor groups. And as Martin, when Martin was offering those kind words, I thought there was somebody else about to come out from behind the curtain. I wasn't sure who he was talking about, but I look after all the master painters, the floor and wall tilers, the big mechanical engineering companies, the Electrical Contractors Association. I'm secretary of all those associations. So it's really the trade contractors, and I suppose the big issues are the same. It's about winning work, but it's about winning work at a price that you can afford to actually complete the project. And are you going to get paid? There are some very, very good brand name, family-run main contractors in the audience that I don't need to name from this part of the world that always paid their supply chain, looked after them, and they have the same people working for them this last 40 and 50 years, down through 2 or 3 generations. But over the last decade, it's all been about going below cost. That's been the biggest risk. And the biggest issue, I think, now, in terms of a turnaround, the biggest risk is, as people price projects, materials are going to rise. And we will see that squeeze in terms of skills. There will be a gap. There will be a shortage of people next year. Absolutely. Because As Minister Coffey outlined this morning, they've talked. It's very, very positive that they're talking about a capital investment programme. It's not that big, but my fear is that they're going to load it and try and aim for maximum full employment just in time for Easter 16, just when you're all going up to the booth to put your X on the page, and that's not good. And we're actually in the process at the minute of commissioning an economic report by DKM to look at what is a sustainable level of output for construction. Is it 14? Is it 12? Or what's the range? You know, is it between 12 and 15%? But something that's more sustainable, because there's absolutely no point in us clamouring for resources, costs going up, and then you end up with people that have been trained, that are in the industry, and after 5 years, they're just told they have to go abroad. I would love to answer the question as well later on. I think I've worked in Scotland, London. I worked on a business park in Riga. I worked on a mining project in Krakow. I priced the City of Angels Cathedral in LA and Tom Bradley International Airport in LAX. Go abroad and get your year, get your 2 years, but don't forget, bring your experience back, because this is the best place in the world to live. You know, you've got Europe on your doorstep. You've got the nicest places that you can go to for your summer holidays. You don't need Perth. You don't need Canada, and it gets pretty cold in Canada. You know, so I would advise you, go abroad and get your experience and bring it back. You'll come back in at a higher level, and you'll be ready to bring the skill sets that you learn in New York or Boston or Perth or Sydney. You know, bring that back with you, and you'll get much greater rewards. So meanwhile, back at the ranch, I'll go on to the topic, and talk. So the history of the Lean Construction Institute was started in the US by a group of construction professionals that really saw all our clients are switched onto this Lean, this Toyota model of production. What's it all about, and why are they using it in their production facilities, and how can we look at it and see what could we bring into the construction site? Yes, the dynamics are different. You're not in a fixed environment. Everything is variable. Lots of things have to come to and from site. You don't just go to a single destination, put raw materials in one end and expect a product out the farm. But it's pretty similar. And the key really is all about the people. It's been mentioned a couple of times today, but they set up the Lean Construction Institute to try and take advantage of the Toyota way, the way that Toyota, you know, looked at their production facilities, their manufacturing facilities, and effectively streamlined the entire process by identifying the waste, the 7 streams of waste, and cutting the waste out. In Ireland, we had a couple of people there were a few guys from Bolton Street that were doing masters in Lean, and John French really was, I suppose, the kind of pivot. John is a project manager, works for Intel in Selbridge. We try and steer it as much as possible away from the project in Intel, because it's not just about the big FDA projects. Lean is really about every single architectural, engineering and construction company in the country improving their business efficiency so that they don't have any fat in their system. Everything that they do is an end product that is bought and paid for by the client. That's the whole point. So these guys established a community of practice. So it's a subset really of the LCI in the United States. There's a community of practice in the UK, there's one in Australia, and there's one in mainland Europe. But here in Ireland, it was commenced April 2014, big launch in Selbridge, in a hotel, sponsored by Intel. The head of construction global for Intel came over, John Pemberton. He's a member of the board of LCI in the States. He came over for the launch, and there were 200 people in the room. A good mix, but again, it was probably loaded by a lot of people that were working on the site in Leixlip that had been told, you have to go to the Lean Construction Institute launch tomorrow night. So it was good then that in May to August, we developed a charter and a vision and expanded the core team. I joined it in June, as did a couple of the other guys. So we have 2 contractors. We have Mercury and Jones Engineering, who are very, very enshrined in the Leixlip project, and they use Lean every single day of the week. They use the type of tools that are there. They've got 120 people in a pit, and that's pure BIM, you know. And BIM is simply a Lean tool. You're going to hear about that, I think, just after. From CIOB, but BIM is simply a Lean tool. It's just one of the tools that you use as part of your Lean kit. So developed the charter, developed the vision, and expanded the core team. And that was to try and put a bit of manners on it and say, well, what are we all about? Who are we? What's the vision? Where are we going? And let's set a structure. We had another event in May, which was sponsored by Jones, another event in September sponsored by Mercury, and then CIF sponsored one in October. And October really was kind of pushing guys out front and centre. We had Gillian Murta from Shea Murta Concrete, Michael Stone from Designer Group, and Philip Crampton from G&T Cramptons. And their whole speech was, look, you might not understand it yet, but try and understand it. Get into it, come and join the group, listen, see what's going on, talk to your peers. There's a lot of high level, very technical speak associated with Lean, but you don't need to worry about that because that's the guys that are doing it day in, day out, non-stop. They're working in a very systematic, process-led environment. Perhaps they're working in a really intensive project. That's great. Let them at it. But Lean is quite simple. It's very, very basic. It's all about self-assessment. It's all about really looking at where your waste is and trying to cut that out. So culminated then in November with over 700 people had attended events up to that stage. And then in February this year, with 830 people actually registered on the LCI LinkedIn site. So they're all effective. That is the community of practice in Ireland. 830 people. In the UK, they've been at it now 15 years, and I think they've got about 920. Texas, which is probably about the same size population as Ireland, maybe. John, you're the one for the stats. But they have around the same number. They're at about 860. So that's where we are at the minute. But what's Lean construction? Well, there's external and internal, and the two things that I would say is external is really about how you're a construction manager, you're an architect, you're an engineer, you're the surveyor, you're the client. It's about how you engage with each other. What's the project management process? How do you sit down? Who develops the design? When do they engage the contractor? Do they do it late? Do they have early contractor involvement like Irish Water? That's a very successful model because you bring in the people that have the expertise and that have done it before and they can say, guys, in this part of the country, you have karstic limestone. We're going to hit it again. You know, it's not on the risk matrix. How do you do that? How do you build it into design? Who's responsible for design? Consultants, at the minute, let's be honest, are not paid properly to cover the full design of a project. So they rely on the contractors to step in, provide design. So this whole matrix of responsibility, allocation of liability is very, very important. If you can force people into a room and say you've got to work together, there's a model form of contract, it's an integrated form of agreement, and the model is really called IPD, where you force people into a room and it's all open book. Now, we're not quite ready for that at this stage, but it is something that's being used in Intel. It's something that's been used on some of the big civils projects in the US, where you effectively say, you go open book on your prices, then we work out what the profit is, we work out what your ratio is in terms of your portion or your ratio of the project capital cost, and you're apportioned an amount of the profit or risk based on the scale of the project that you represent. But what it does is if I've got a guy beside me that's a civil engineer, or a guy beside me here that's doing the cladding system and the roofing, and they're falling behind, or they need help in terms of engineering data, design, wind loads, bracing systems, I can see that they're weak. They're affecting my profit because I'm losing money if they lose money on the job. So can you see the incentive for me standing back and saying, I'll put an engineer into your site, I'll put an engineer into your office, or we're going to talk to the client and get you more resources. You know, it works. The system works. But it requires a completely different level of transparency, and it really requires, I suppose, a long-term approach. It's really like strategic partnering more than just traditional form of contracting. The internal factors: how's your business performing? As Martin said, we did a lean pilot where I brought a consultant in. They were Enterprise Ireland approved, but we brought them in and they did it pro bono because we were introducing them to the M&E market in Ireland. We had a breakfast briefing. We got 7 companies to sign up. So the MD came and they brought the person along with them that they were going to leave at the table. Then we had a 1-day session in a hotel in Castleknock. It's fairly intensive. It was a workshop in the morning, and in the afternoon then was really a run-through on effectively a lean health check toolkit, which had 96 different questions. And the whole point was you take it away. They're all 96 questions within the 7 strands of waste. Waste could be defects, going back to fix work that you already did. time and motion. Guys landing at a compound and having to walk 400 or 500 metres to the site, coming back to get their tools, going back again because they forgot something, going back again because the materials land and your man can only drop in the yard and have to handball the stuff up. All these type of things, looking at where waste, no one pays for that. It's carried in the job, but no one pays for it. The client doesn't pay for it. It's waste. So why are we doing it? That's the whole point. Looking at your business process, that was a really successful one. The measure of success for me was the fact that 4 of the 7 companies brought the consultant in-house, and they brought him in to really cross-examine and strip apart their business and see where the fat is. And those guys are now going for Lean Improve, which is the next level of Enterprise Ireland funding. Coupled with that, we're working on a programme, and we finalised it on Friday morning with Grant Thornton. So any contractors or anybody who knows contractors, we have a programme now primarily for SMEs, but anyone really with a scalable company. Grant Thornton have a lean for back office, which they effectively come into your company and they strip the business apart. They do an audit and they effectively tell you where you're wasting money. So that costs about 6,800, and there's an Enterprise Ireland grant for €5,000. So I'm doing a sales pitch there to some of the contractors in the room on that one. But the whole point is, again, it's all about trying to internationalise business, improve business efficiency, and make us effectively the sharpest tools in the box. So how is your business performing? What do you do that the client doesn't pay for or doesn't add any value? That's the motto that was developed by the core group, which is effectively the management committee. I suppose I sit on that. There are 8 of us on the management committee, made up of clients, the CIF, contractors and consultants. But we're badly missing some of these guys. We've tried to get Engineers Ireland engaged, CIOB, CAB, SCSI, hold your head in shame. You're obviously making enough money in your jobs that you aren't interested. You've got to get engaged. You've got to get engaged. So lean thinking will benefit the Irish construction industry and wider economy. And the LCI, the Lean Construction Institute, the community of practice, is the way that we're going to deliver it. So this is just, I think the graphics sort of help in explaining what the process is, but it's all about the people, the culture, the talent, and the history associated with the people. But this is really just, that's the LCI Congress. There's one of them every year in the States. The global conference, it was in San Francisco last year. It's actually in Perth this year, if anyone's interested. Martin, I'm sure you'll be on the plane. But the first step, so what we did in October last year was we set up pillars, because there's no point, having this fantastic idea if you don't structure it. And that's what Lean's all about. It's been very systematic in terms of setting up a structure and following the structure. On the 12th of January then this year, we had an alignment of pillars, which is to make sure that they all had tactics, they all effectively had objectives that they had to follow, and to make sure that there's no crossover. So the first one was growth. I am on that with Jerry Walsh from Mercury. That's an even better photograph. And our job really is to examine other community of practices. So the States, look at Australia, look at the UK, look at what's failed, because the UK has failed. The consultants took over. They thought it was a money spinner, a gravy train, and it's collapsed. So you get a lot of people in the UK looking at the LCA and Lean and they go, maybe, maybe not, but that's why. And once you understand that, it's fine, it's easy enough to avoid it and prevent it from happening here, but at least you also understand that the thing can work as long as you put the right people in place. So we understand the message, the core values of those different groups, and then tailor that to meet our needs while also maintaining the core ethos. The second one is knowledge, which is really about education and training people. Kevin White from Jones and Michael Delaney from Leo Lynch's, both mechanical contractors. And their job was to effectively develop a starter pack. So it's effectively the Ladybird edition. So it's something you can open and kind of go, right, this is what Lean's about. This is what I need to know, and this is what my team need to know. For people to learn, to get into the terminology, to understand the tools. And then a starter development pack, which takes it to the next level. How you actually move through the journey. Start the journey and move through your own journey to develop your own company, develop your own capacity. And to be able to go into clients at the bid meetings and say, yes, we're Lean enabled. We've already gone through the first stage. We've had our assessment, we've had our audit, but our team understand what Lean is, and they're out there. They're our eyes and ears on the ground on the projects. They're bringing the messages back about where they think the waste is. And then the development pack itself, I suppose, is offering layered training. So it's all kind of like the jiu-jitsu or whatever. It's all white, yellow, up as far as black belt. You can do yellow belts online for, I think, $65. A couple of the companies offer it, and it's quite good. I'd recommend that you look for it. I can send people a link, Martin, if needs be after. Barriers really is to not look at, not to say why are we not doing it, but what's actually a roadblock? What's preventing this thing from taking off? What do we need to change? Is it the form of contract? Is it the way people get paid? Is it their traditional roles? Does the traditional project exist anymore? You know, when we talked earlier on about engineers, the same people, the same professional roles exist, but people have completely different roles nowadays. And Barriers is led by Vincent Gibson, who's a postgrad student doing an MPhil in DIT in Lean, and Downey Greensmith, who works for Intel on the client side. There, you can read the formula, but a lot of the groups they've come forward and they're just doing their own thing. They've just started, they're just working away. So this Friday morning, for anybody that thinks, you know, this is great, it's all brilliant, it's theoretical, I can't even get into the room on Friday morning. There's 84 FDI clients, all owners, Bristol Myers Squibb, Merck, Sharp and Dome. John, you'll be outside the door as well, pretending to smoke a fag and trying to sneak in. No one else is allowed into the room. There's 84 of them in the room sharing their ideas on Friday morning in Dublin Castle. I think it's in Dublin Castle, and part of it might be in Intel in the afternoon. But they're all talking because Lean for them is the way they develop their internal systems. When they're changing their production method, they use Lean. They have Six Sigma black belts all over the production floor. So they're looking at it, they're going, well, why is our contractor not doing this? Why is our architect designing something, sending it out, and then 6 months later he changes it as the job goes on? It's not good enough. So they're looking at applying Lean completely now to all their construction projects. So again, I'll say the same statement. If you ever go for an interview, be it for a job or as part of a contractor team or a design consultancy going, you know, to bid for a project or bid for the job, if you're looking for the job and people ask you what's your understanding of Lean, if you don't know, well, you're going to be at the back of the queue. It's quite simple. You need to get switched on. The key point there in that was the fact that until such time as everyone is dissatisfied with the status quo, we're never going to get change. That's the point. Okay? So their job was to get top-level buy-in and also to consider monetizing it, because the LCI at the minute is completely, it's a voluntary group. We don't charge any money. All the events are free. They might monetize it by creating a logo that people get if they are a Lean company or if they participate. But we're working on that. We prefer to keep it completely cash neutral, so there's no money involved, and then it's a lot easier. No one can, you can't be attacked. They can't pull us down if we've got no money. So I think the idea is we stay voluntary, we try and keep it a cashless society, I suppose, for as long as possible. It may be that the stakeholders are off, CIF are off developing their own training. We're doing the Lean Start now with Grant Thornton. That's something that just generates a small revenue, but it's not necessarily designed to create a cash flow for the Federation. It's more to make sure our companies are the best in the country at what they do. Their job also engage with public and private sector clients. Facilitate roundtable discussions, so that's this Friday. That's the Dublin Castle event. And then review what financial models are used in other LCI chapters. UK is a registered charity, so they might look at that as an option. I don't know. Collaboration then looks at how you sort of draw the different strands together, the different stakeholders. Paul Ebbs is a graduate doing, he's actually moved on to a PhD now. Paul was one of the founding members. He was one of the guys that just said, he'd made the connections. He was doing a master's in Lean in DIT. And he made a couple of connections with the guys in the States. So much so that he's now working in San Diego. He started there last Monday. He's working for a Lean consultant in San Diego, up the West Coast. So he's done pretty well out of it. And Paul Daniel is actually a contractor on the Intel site as well. So their job was to look at, I suppose, examine research to try and scrape what data is out there and look at developing research papers to try and sell the message, is lean working in Ireland and what is it? And then obviously focus on the CIF's Construction Summit is on the 1st of October in Croke Park, in the conference centre, not on the pitch. Jerry might be out in the pitch that day. Some chance. If the girls are playing camogie, maybe that's about it. But the Construction Summit, 1st of October, is the National Construction Conference, and that'll be there's a very good chance that on that night we might have the Lean Construction Ireland Awards, where they'll be awarding contractors, those that have excelled, consultants, those that have stepped forward and kind of led the industry. So that's one to keep an eye on. Demand then is John French, as I said, from Intel, and Richard Casey from DPS, who are sort of client-side consultants on the project management side, and Intel as well. Their job was to examine the other community of practice, understand the message, develop a website. The website's up and running, and tailor that to meet our needs, whilst also, I suppose, maintaining the core ethos of the Irish site. Also to develop a coaching program, so it's to look at people that are already active, that are senior within the industry, that understand Lean, understand the tools, and to allow them to mentor either companies or people, to bring them through that path as well. And the last one's measure, which we introduced. There's only really supposed to be 5 pillars, but we thought, why not? The last one is a temporary one, I suppose. That's really a data capture. It's just to sort of go out and measure exactly what's out there. I think she was at a wedding that day, I don't know. But Gary Widger's from Mercury, and Ellie works client-side and Intel as well. But compare the data from similar projects. Theirs was to show benchmarking, to show where the success stories, where does it work. So if I'm looking now to make a start, rather than just go to a consultant and then taking me through the path again, can I go and talk to someone that's done it before? You know, can they show me their data? Will they tell me that we brought it in and we used it? The guys that we brought down actually for the initial pilot that I did in 2013 were foreign construction, because they use it on Scottish water contracts. They use it on. They've got a nice linear profile, 10-kilometre long sections of road in Glasgow City, doing road refurbishment or laying water pipes or drainage systems. So it's quite easy for them to just look at repetitive systems, curbing, concrete pours. And they shared with us, they just opened their books and said, look, this is what we save. Not actual figures, but percentages. And the stark reality is that they're saving a fortune simply by introducing this concept. And it was very, very difficult, because they had to go into the client and say, we need you to tell everybody else that's coming in next, your architect, engineer, surveyors, cost managers, you need to tell them to come into the room as well. We're going to bring the subcontractors and supply chain in. We need to force us all to sit in the room. We need to work out how this project's going to be built. So it's quite a good process. Also, I suppose, compile data on residential. So there's comparative benchmarks in residential, commercial, and medical or other types of projects. Look at international standards and benchmarks to see how Ireland compares. And then also, I suppose, there's cross-fertilisation there between some of the other pillars. And the possibility of looking at an industry-wide survey, maybe just to capture a moment in time and see what's the understanding of Lean and where we're going. But that's really the point. This is Richard Keegan. Richard Keegan is the leader of Lean in Enterprise Ireland. And he's a very strong advocate, but he is actually the leader of the global Toyota Lean Forum. So he's pitching at the very, very highest level. He gets brought into Ferrari, gets brought into Fiat to look at the production systems and tell them where they're going wrong and to fix it for them. These guys operating at the highest level internationally. And we have access to him because he's the leader on the Lean side, sponsoring all the Lean construction programs through Enterprise Ireland. So this is the point. You can kind of see the overlap from the pillars, and you can see the idea. Really, it was to try and cast this. It's a bit like the Spire, but the whole point is to sort of sell Ireland as the best in the world for delivering construction projects. be it architectural, engineering, or construction. That's the whole point. We're trying to advertise the fact that we've got the best in the world. Whether you're going abroad for a couple of years and then coming back, or you just stay here and you develop your skill set here, the whole point is Irish people are effectively the best construction managers, contractors, engineers, architects and surveyors that the world has to offer. That's why they want us so much. That's why they want us so much. So the challenge is building the pillars to be an engine for change and improvement. And that kind of kind of repetitive speech that Richard Keegan comes out with is better, faster, cheaper, together. That's the mantra. Okay, so there you can see that's why we ended up with 6 pillars as opposed to 5. And I'll leave it, and we'll hold the questions to the end, Martin. Okay, thanks very much.